Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Divorcing Strong podcast. I'm your guest, I'm always say that, you know what I mean? I'm the host, Becky Sampson. And I have to say, I have had the most amazing experiences this last couple months interviewing so many people in this space of divorce. And like I always say, it's wonderful to be surrounded by people who are coming from their heart. And today's episode is no less of a person who comes from a heart to want to be able to give you the right information. And so we're going to be talking about money today and finances and how to look at that, what kind of things to look at, what are the things that you're missing, and that sort of thing. So I also just wanted to encourage you to like and share this video with people who are going through divorce. I have found that it's usually not the person that's going through the divorce that's looking for necessarily the resources and may not even know that there's all these resources out, but it's the family and the friends who are the ones who are really like, hey, you got to talk to this person, you got to talk to that person. So please like and share. Feel free to send this to somebody that you know is going through a difficult divorce or even, any kind of divorce, because it's very, very important information. So today's guest is Donna Cates. She's a financial strategist, wealth builder, and certified divorce financial analyst who's on a mission to help women step boldly into financial confidence. She's the founder of Money Matters Wealth Solutions and creator of Navigating Divorce, what women need to know where she guides women through the financial side of divorce with equal parts compassion and clarity. Donna blends Southern charm with no-nonsense wisdom, helping women move from I don't know where to start to I've got this. So she's also the bestseller author of Divorce Decoded and A Woman's Guide to Financial Security and Fair Settlement, because a man is not a financial plan. That's going to be an interesting one for us to talk about. So whether she's coaching clients, speaking on stage, or hosting her Money Matters Empowerment podcast, Donna's message is very clear. Every woman deserves a voice at her own financial table and the confidence to use it. So welcome to the show, Donna.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
I know. I'm excited to talk about your man is not your financial plan. But before we get there, kind of tell everybody, I know we just did a little bio, but in your own words, I love to hear what brought you to this space, in this divorce space, and what makes you so passionate about helping women specifically. I mean, you help men too, but to help women through this divorce process.
Well, I've been a financial advisor for over 25 years. And in my early days of my career, I was working, doing a lot of networking. I'm like you, a connector, but it just kind of fell naturally. But a lot of divorce attorneys were referring women to me post-divorce because they were getting these settlements, sometimes small, sometimes large. But these women, they hadn't been the breadwinner or the person at the financial table leading the cause. So they were kind of lost on what they needed to do with their money, that they got from the divorce. So, but what I discovered in those referrals that I was grateful to get was that a lot of women were leaving money on the table. Didn't know enough about their financial household to even ask the right questions. And if you don't have the best attorney that may not be doing the digging that they need to do, you risk, leaving things on the table and just not understanding, how to make smart, informed decisions.
Okay, so let's stop right there, because this is a really, really important part for women to realize, because especially when they're not in, typically, sometimes not. I mean, it's my first marriage, I was the 100% in the finances, right? My second divorce, I wasn't involved at all, hardly. But you just said something that was really important, is that you need to know the right questions to ask in order to know what's going on. And then now, how do you navigate past that? I love that part. So what are some of the questions? Maybe I should ask you that question, is what are some of the questions that women should ask?
Yeah, I'm happy to share that. So I actually give everybody that works with me a checklist. It's literally a financial checklist of all of the documents that they need to be pulling together. So, and not to be critical of any attorney, but they'll usually give you like an asset list, and you just fill in the blanks, and they'll give you a budget, and it's not really in depth. But I give one, where it's literally, you need to be asking, is there a pension? What about a 401k? Are there any of these things that companies that you worked at previously? Where are all the bank accounts? Do we have credit cards? What about the mortgage? All of the different details that are available.
Who's on the mortgage, right?
Right. And that's a huge thing right there. So just avoiding, financial pitfalls. But, it's a lot of times it's just not front of mind. Like, I work from home, and last week the pest control guy shows up and he wants me to stroke him a check when he gets ready to leave. If you had sat down a budget in front of me and said, Donna, write down the expenses of living in your home, I probably would not have thought of pest control or the yard maintenance. I'm thinking mortgage, utilities, that kind of thing. So it's really kind of digging in deep and asking for full disclosure of anything that remotely involves money and your financial well-being. Insurance coverage. Who's got, do you have life insurance? Is it personally owned, or is it group insurance that's provided by an employer that you might lose if you no longer have work? Those are some of the things that we ask for.
Yeah, those are very important. I mean, and it's I love that you have a checklist, because I don't know if everybody's that way, but I'm a checklist person. Like, I need to, to make sure that I hit all of those things. Now, the other thing that just came to my mind is, you may or may not know this, but I own a company called Only Subpoenas. And so a lot of times through people are going through divorce, and they're asking for that in discovery, those like retirement plans, or what is the bank number, or what's all of the bank records for the last couple of years. It's nice that if they ask for it, they can get it back. But this is one of the things that I'm constantly, even when I'm guesting on other things, is telling them the power of the subpoena is that you can subpoena all of that information so that you can make an informed decision. Do you find many times in your cases, or not cases because you're not an attorney, but in your working with people, do they resort to subpoenas, and do they even know about that?
I will tell you, I literally was on a phone call yesterday with a woman who attended my divorce workshop over the weekend. And she said, Donna, I don't even know where to start, because I don't have access to anything, and I don't know how I'm going to get this. And I don't know if he has X, Y, or Z. But, that's what I shared is, and that's where the checklist is really helpful. You can go down that checklist and say, yes, I know about this. Check it off. Now you don't have to look at that again. But if you've got a question mark, you don't know, does it exist? Do we even have it? Or where do I find it? That's, now you've got a clear list. So yes, people don't realize that they can actually do their own subpoenas or get help like your own. They're relying on the attorneys. And the woman that I talked to yesterday said, my husband's just not playing by the rules. He had 30 days to respond, and he's refusing to give the information. So, now she's just sitting there waiting in limbo. But the reality is she knows the company that he works for. She knows who the 401k provider is. So she could simply go and subpoena it. So, but yes, I love having you as a resource to help with with that.
Well, and this is the thing, is that people don't realize that you can do. So when I was in my case, I did 21 subpoenas myself when I was representing myself. So I learned how to do it. So whether you're pro se, you can do it, because that was the same case that I had. I mean, we went through discovery, went 8-9 months through discovery, and he wouldn't give the information. He would give some of it, but not all of it, for me to make an informed decision. So I ended up just stopped asking permission. And I always tell people, then just go subpoena it. Now, I don't recommend that they do that right out the gates. That's not going to look good in court. And that's also not going to look good for you. But if you're not getting it, you absolutely have every right. And even if you have attorneys, this is another thing. Attorneys, I can't tell you how many calls I get from people that call me and say, look, I talked to my attorney about subpoenaing and they're not doing it. They don't want to do it. And well, that's the reason why I'm in business. So that's what I do, is subpoenas for divorce attorneys, is because they are a little tricky and they can be difficult, and compliance can be difficult, but that's what I specialize in. The reason why I brought that up is because when it comes to finances, it's so important to be empowered with all the information. And I love that you have that checklist for them to be like, okay, I need that one. I need that one. How do I get this one? That sort of thing. So when people come to you, at what stage are they usually, do you prefer them to come to you at what stage?
I'm glad you made that distinction, because I get them when they're just thinking about divorce, it's just a glimmer in their mind, all the way to they're already in the middle of it. They've got their divorce attorneys and they're figuring out, hey, I have no clue what I'm doing. So the best for me, literally, and I think even for the attorneys, is for the clients to work with someone like me as a CDFA first, and maybe even a divorce coach first. But in coming to me first, I help you get organized around gathering your data.
Mm-hmm.
So when you show up at the attorney's office, you're not empty-handed going, I don't know how to get this. You're coming in very much prepared. And then secondly, by going through this process with me, we determine, what you don't have access to and what you're going to need to ask help for. So we've cut your attorney bill in half, probably, because you're not having to spend money for the attorney to get that information for you. You're bringing it to the table. But when we're able to do that, the other thing is that you have a better understanding of what your financial position looks like, what your entire household or your net worth looks like, what your cash flow looks like. So now you're going to be a lot more reasonable in the negotiations that you do. I've had women say, I want to keep the house, and I'm keeping this, and I'm keeping the business, and I just want everything. It's not practical. Everything's going to be divided, typically 50-50 or equitably. So working with someone like me, I can actually help you understand what the container looks like and look at specific ways that you can consider, dividing them. So, and I always tell everybody that I speak to that, I'm not an attorney and I can't give you legal advice, but I do have enough experience in the legal and the divorce system to understand how things typically go. So what I'm doing is giving you options to consider, different scenarios, so that when you meet with your attorney, you can say, I think this is what I want. This is what this would look like. What do you think about this? And then the attorney is going to give you a legal opinion on whether or not that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that same question. What if somebody's listening and thinking, well, can't the attorney help me through that? Or do I need to have two different people dealing with my finances?
Well, if you're in divorce right now, you know that it takes a village. And the sad reality is most of us hate spending money on divorce.
Yeah.
You think about having to pay a retainer for your attorney, and now you're going to be hiring a professional, a financial expert. You're going to hire, a divorce coach, maybe a realtor, all of the different things. But hear my heart when I say everybody is serving your best interest. And you, by paying for that service, are working with the expert that does nothing but focus on that. My job's not the legal part. So you're not going to ask me for the legal advice, but anything that has to do with the money stuff, I'm your person. Now, and I will say that, and this isn't, being critical of attorneys, there are some attorneys, there are, tax attorneys,
Right.
folks that may be more schooled in the money stuff, but they're not trained in all of the financial implications of your settlement. They don't even know how to evaluate them. So that's the thing, by having someone like me on your team working with your attorney, your attorney is going to make the legal recommendations, and then I can show you what that's going to mean for you financially. And the big things are like, you may be dividing something, but are you getting something that has very low cost basis, which means you're going to have to pay a lot of capital gains taxes? Are you getting something that even is of value? Are you getting something that's going to create growth for you, or is it going to result in more debt? So it's not that the attorneys aren't capable of advising. It's just the money stuff is not their wheelhouse. So having building that team for your divorce is really essential.
I was actually just having this conversation with an attorney yesterday about this, is that, again, when you're hiring an attorney, you need to know what their specialties are and what their specialties are not, so that you know where to be able to fill in those gaps. And I love that you said that. I mean, it's knowing who's on that team. And a lot of people going through divorce are just going through survival, right? We're just like going, I'm just trying to get through the day, or taking care of the kids, or, whatever it is. And it does require a lot. In my case, my divorce, because it was so contentious, was a full-time job for me. And so you have to be really careful that it doesn't turn into that. One of the questions that I think is really interesting is, why do you think so many women feel so ashamed about money, and how do you help them take that power back? Because especially if they're not the main breadwinner of so how do you get them past that?
Ooh, we could do an entire podcast just on
I
that.
know.
But briefly, I will say, the reality is, we women, regardless, we can be doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, stay-at-home moms, it doesn't matter. Our plates are too full, and we typically will hand off responsibility for managing all the money stuff if we have a partner who is interested and willing to do it. So it's not a criticism at all. It's what we do because we have too much on our plates. So even intelligent, well-versed women are saying, here, honey, you handle it. But then, for me, and that's where a man is not a financial plan comes into play, because at some point, if you're a woman, you will be on your own, whether it's by choice, divorce, or widowhood.
Yeah.
So my plea to everybody is, even if you're not the one that's doing the day-to-day management of all of the financial stuff for your household, at least have an understanding of what you have, where everything is, and how it works. You don't have to be, into the details of it, but you at least have to know what's there and how it's working, and just where to find everything, because, life will happen at some point, and you're going to be deer in the headlights going, I have no clue what to do. But the same thing, that's the thing that I find interesting. I don't know. I think a lot of times, as kids, even, we might be told, hey, don't worry about that, or I've got it, or, we're just, I'm not sure where the shame comes from, but we're kind of as kids, told, hey, you don't need to worry about this. So we don't. We just say, okay, let him handle it. And that's why I do what I do, because it's not a safe place for women to be, regardless of the state of your marriage.
Yeah, I truly believe in transparency both ways, right? Like my experience in my first marriage was I was the one that had all the spreadsheets and I had all the numbers, and I was the main breadwinner in that marriage. And I remember oftentimes coming together with him and saying, look, you need to know this stuff too. If I were to die, like, you need to know. But he didn't take as much of an interest. Whereas the second husband that I had, he was much older, but when he was married, he didn't have anything to do with it, his first marriage. So he was like, oh, I'm definitely taking control. And by the way, I'm happily married now for the third time and last, by the way.
Yay.
Yay. And my husband also 27 and a half years had nothing to do with the finances. He just went to work every day, came home and gave up the money and never knew what was in the bank, and was left with 21 cents in the bank from his ex-wife. And so I said to him, this is so important that we are 100% transparent. We are both involved in paying the bills. We're both in communication about that. So here's my weird question that just kind of came off my thought is that how often do you find when working with couples, or even, obviously one person getting divorced, that there's one person that doesn't know about it and the other person does? So
very, very common, very split. And again, that's kind of been, my call to action is don't be the person that's sitting at the sidelines or doesn't have a voice at the financial table, because it's not an if. You're going to need that information. It's a when. So, but when I first started in this work 25 years ago, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. So I'm a Southern girl, but initially I thought, well, is this just a Southern thing? Or are we just nice and we just kind of take a back seat to it? Or are we just that vulnerable or what? But no, I work with people all over the US, and it does not matter where you are, whether you have 10 zeros behind your name or 2. We are all, in that vulnerable spot.
The reason why I asked that question is I wonder, this is just my thought, is I wonder if that's one of the equations, like one of the things to look at if in a marriage, if one person knows everything and the other one doesn't, if that creates somehow a division that ends up in divorce, meaning if you don't want to get divorced, make sure you both are on the same page and you know everything.
And that's been my message. And I actually offer like premarital financial counseling that helps people have those tough conversations. It's kind of like, going into a marriage and thinking about a prenup. Nobody wants to do that. But even before you talk about prenup, just understanding somebody's financial history. Are they in tremendous debt? How are they with money? Do they gamble? Or are they risk takers, or are they cautious? Or, but we don't have those conversations because we're happy and in love and feeling all the good feels and not wanting to have the hard conversations. But to be a responsible adult and then eventually a responsible parent, we must do.
Have you ever heard of the game Cashflow?
No, I'm not familiar.
Okay, so it's a game. It's called Cashflow. It's from Robert Kiyosaki, and my first husband and I used to play it all the time. And we had a friend of ours over. This is a really funny story. We had a friend of ours over that was dating a girl. He came over. They played the game on the date or whatever, and he was super, super risky. Or maybe she was super risky. I can't remember which one. Anyway, one of them was super risky. And at the end of the game, I was just like, oh, I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. How you play a game is how you do everything. Because everybody, because it's all about investments, right? Like, are you just going to throw every cent that you have in an investment? Or are you going to diversify? Or are you going to, what's your strategy? And it was like, I remember when I did dating coaching, and I was just like, have your person play the game and see how they respond. Because how you do anything is how you do everything, right? Mm-hmm. And that's such an important thing to know when you're in a relationship. So when you're working with clients, what do you see is probably one of the most things that they misunderstand about the divorce process when it comes to their finances?
I will tell you I think the most common thing that I see is attachment to the marital home. And it can be for a variety of reasons. It could be, I've got young children. I don't want to take them from the only home they've ever known. I don't want to move them out of their school district. I had one woman who was retiring, and she had just built her final home, and it was her dream home. And she was like, not no, but heck no, I'm not giving that up. But we have these emotional attachments, and we're making these decisions before we even consider all of the money things. So number one, if the mortgage isn't already in your name, are you going to be able to get that mortgage refinanced into your name? Do you qualify? Are you credit worthy? And then beyond that, can I even afford to keep the home? It's not just the cost of, the mortgage and the utilities. There's all the things, like I mentioned earlier, the pest control guy showing up. So we really need to understand the cost of it. And then too, it's like, if you don't have liquidity, if you don't have other assets that are available for you to spend, does it even make sense for you to own your home? Or would it make more sense to sell it and divide the proceeds so that you now have some liquid assets or, cash in the bank that you can use to live off of or support your lifestyle? So I think that's the biggest one right there. Yeah, that's
I love, well, that goes right along with what you are, as you're a strategist. You have to have all the information to be able to strategize what's going to be the best use of those resources that you have. And I think one of the things too is that people, I know, I ended up losing my place in my first divorce because I just did not want to leave. Like I couldn't, it was my safe space. And it was one of the worst decisions I ever made because it would have been a really good investment. And I do you find that people going through divorce, it's just detaching from what they're used to letting go to what they could have?
Yes. And that's, it's kind of part of the process and working with me too, is that, I recommend that we literally just put everything down on paper or spreadsheets, wherever. But we don't want to have any emotional attachment to anything. Doesn't matter whose names is on it, whether you came into the marriage with it or not. Let's just get everything down on a piece of paper, black and white, no judgment about it. Now, and I literally say we got to pull up our big girl britches.
Yeah,
and
I do too.
This is the thing. I mean, this divorce is one of the most emotional experiences you'll ever have. Yeah. So we have to kind of compartmentalize. We're not going to say don't have the emotions. You have to feel and be in all the feelings and process everything. But we are going to say now's the time for us to treat this as a business relationship. This is a business contract that we're breaking, and we're going to pull up those big girl britches, and we're going to make solid, sound decisions based on reality, not emotions. So it's, that's the most helpful thing, is just to get everything on paper and say, okay, I know you want to keep the house but let's just say, what if? Let's just play the what if game. And if I can get them to let go of the what if, I mean, that what they think they want, and we can do some different scenarios to show them what might be possible if we look at different situations. Now their eyes are opening up and they're going, okay, well, I don't have to stay here. Or, maybe I can, but things are going to look a little different expense wise, or what we're spending wise. It's the aha moment when they go, okay, but there is light on the other side, and I'm going to get there. And there are some tough choices that you'll have to make, but that's true of everything in life. So we just have to be practical about it, and knowing, I think you mentioned a moment ago, we can't go into something blind, not knowing all of the financial details. I'll share this with you. I have a woman that was going to mediation. I mean, she had an attorney, and she had hired me to work with her to pull together all the financial information. She knew nothing. She literally had a very part-time job, and her job was taking care of the kids. And so she didn't have access to anything. Well, the attorney was pressuring her to go ahead and do mediation. And I'm sitting here from my end going, honey, you can't go to mediation because you don't know anything.
I know. We talked about this just last week on a podcast about mediation. I'm like, that's exactly what happened to me. I'm like, how do we mediate if you don't have all the information?
Right.
You
And
need the
we, as
information.
women, we're scared. I don't
I
know if
know.
we're scared or what, to sit at that mediation table with
Yep.
two attorneys, the
Yep.
mediator, and say, I'm sorry, I can't mediate.
Yep.
Sorry, can't do it. Don't have the info. Thank you. We don't do that.
I know. I had to do it. I had to do it myself, and it was difficult. Sorry, you were saying something about the client. I just cut you off.
That's exactly where hers went.
Okay.
So she was forced into a mediation, even though she did not have any of the financial information, and she thought that they were kind of going to settle on a couple of things, like the stuff with the parenting schedule and stuff. All of that was good, but they were coming back to the financial. Nope, it was signed. She signed it. It was the memorandum of agreement was written up into a divorce decree that was submitted that day. And she was clueless that was even happening. So it was awful. And
those are the kind of situations where I just want to, oh my gosh, like, this is the reason why you need professionals around you that know the process and know how to prepare you for those kind of things. I also want to I want you to touch on something that's, I think, is so important for women, and men, I should say. But a lot of women will end up getting like an alimony, or will get some kind of settlement payment. Talk a little bit about how do you work with somebody that for some reason he decides to stop paying. I mean, they're relying on that money, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, he could get remarried. His wife doesn't want to pay it anymore, and now he's no longer compliant with the court order. Like, how do you navigate that?
Well, when that happens, the only recourse that you have is to go back to the courts to say he's in default. He is not honoring his commitment. One of the things that I do propose to women is that if they can ask for a property settlement in lieu of alimony, and you're able to tell you whether it's appropriate or not. Property settlements are typically used when there's an illiquid asset, like a business.
Right.
We've got a $5 million business, and I've got to stroke a check for 2.5 to buy my spouse out. I'm not sitting on that money that's not already marital assets.
Right.
I do a property settlement that says I'm going to pay you 2.5 million, this much per month for the next 10 years, or whatever that looks like. But the reason that could be favorable over an alimony payment is that it doesn't matter if you remarry. It doesn't matter if he dies. You can't stroke a check from the grave. So if you have a property settlement, now if any more money is due you can actually claim it against his estate. So once a property settlement is put in place, it cannot be changed either. I mean, the date, the amount, all of that is locked in. So if you can negotiate using that, and I'll tell you honestly, a lot of men who have said, I'm not paying you alimony, will end up doing a property settlement.
Yeah.
I don't know if they realize that they're really doing that. It's
a favor.
There's just another name for it, but it doesn't matter. They're getting it. So, but yeah,
there is just a major, men just in general do not like alimony checks. They just don't like that every month being reminded of that. So I think you're very smart in giving that advice to getting a settlement. However, there's also, I mean, in my personal case, we settled, but he never paid the bill. And so people don't realize that you're now in a collections. And one of the things that you just said is that keep your emotions out of it. Right. That's exactly what my mother told me during my divorce. This last one is, she says, Becky, it's now time to pull your big girl panties up and get to work. This is now a business transaction. And that seems very heartless. However, like you just said, there's some of those things people would not even know or even consider. And that's why it's important to come to someone like yourself to be able to like, look, here's all your options. This is what happens if this happens and if this happens. And so you're working in behalf of your client's best interest, oftentimes of what they don't know.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest danger is going into the divorce process. You may understand the legal system from what you see on television. Divorce court is so far removed from what we see on television. So, get yourself educated, Google, don't rely on ChatGPT to give you legal advice, but it is a good place to go research, because you can ask ChatGPT, what questions do I need to ask of my attorney? What financial information do I need to be gathering? At least that's a place to start with getting the research material. So you don't want to go into it blindly.
Well, and I always say, if you're going to use ChatGPT, which unfortunately that wasn't there it was towards the end of mine, but if you're going to use it, then ask for the reference of the statutes that are in your particular jurisdiction in your state, so that you can go research exactly what the courts and the lawyers are bound by, or they're supposed to be bound by. Let's just say that.
Yes.
Yeah. So you are actually you're out there, you're doing podcasts, you're writing books. You've got the most recent book. Tell us a little bit about that one. You've got the Divorce Decoded, but tell us about your most recent book that you have.
The most recent one's called A Women's Guide to Financial Security and Fair Settlement. And I wrote this one specifically to address all of the financial issues. So this book is literally a tutorial on all the things that you need to know that you may not be thinking about because you don't know that you need to know it. So the intent of the book was to have a resource that would help you understand what you need to be asking for, document-wise, information-wise, understanding the impact of various decisions. So it's kind of like the common financial pitfalls, asking to keep the house when you don't even know if you can apply, get the mortgage refinanced in your name, how you're going to divide retirement accounts, or even if you're going to need to. So it's all, everything is in there, and it's a really good tool. If you know somebody that's thinking about divorce, it would be a fabulous gift. It is available only on Kindle right this minute, but it will be available in hardback and paperback in the next few weeks.
I'm actually looking it up. Do you have a copy of it on your book or on your page?
It is on my website.
Okay, so I'm just looking real quick just so I can show everybody. Divorce Decoded, and then is it the Ultimate Divorce Toolbox?
No. Actually, the new book it's actually not even linked on there yet.
Okay, it's not on there. Okay, awesome. Well, you can go to your website. I was just going to show it on there. But first of all, thank you for what you do. because I just believe, now this works for men and women, right? Yes. Like I'm a huge believer that, and this is the reason why I'm such a believer in subpoenas, is because it's not to gouge the other person or to go for more than what's yours. It's for a fair and equitable division. Mm-hmm. And you need to know what all your tools are out there. And so I love that you put a book together. I want a copy of it, because I want to be able to be like, look, this is how it's fair and equitable. And unfortunately, I mean, I do have a lot of people on the podcast that talks about collaborative, but when it's not collaborative, and when you're literally fighting financially for fairness, it can be really draining. It can be super draining. Mm-hmm. And I believe, my sweet husband, I always tell him all the time, I'm like, look, 27 years and you were left with 21 cents. Now that wasn't the only equity, but that was a pretty big stab in the back. And I said to him, I said, look, as long as if you had all the information and then you made that decision to walk away, that's fine. But he didn't. And so yeah, it's fair and equitable is what I think most people in this space would support you to have, and you do deserve it. Mm-hmm. I always say, oftentimes I think as women, we feel like we don't provide as much financially to the equation. That's not always the case, but sometimes, and then women feel like they have to make excuses for our existence. Mm-hmm. No, you are part of that. And especially if you have children, advocate for yourself. That's probably one of the last questions I'll ask you is that how often do you see after the fact that people now have children and now they put themselves in a financial strain because they didn't know what they didn't know? They didn't get the help they need.
That's always the case. And that's a big part of the work that I do is understanding, because child support's not going to cover everything that it costs you to raise a child.
Yep.
So we understand, we really dig into the depths of what's it going to cost to raise this child, and then negotiating who's going to be responsible for paying what. But yeah, that's the thing. And it's the, once you make the financial decisions and that divorce decree is done, there's no do-overs on the asset divisions. Now, alimony and child support and all of that can be renegotiated, but and that's when life changes, major significant changes. But once the retirement assets are done, or you've got the house, or whatever the outcome is, there's no do-over. So, and you may end up, find yourself short, and it's a hard place to dig out of.
Yeah. So the moral of the story, people, is get the help up front, get yourself educated. I also, right here, I like to mention, this is 100 divorce terms. This right here, because the more educated you are, like, at least if you understand the terms, then you'll be able to navigate divorce a lot better in meeting with financial people, meeting with the courts, understanding how the attorneys speak when they talk about motions, things like that, what that means and the power of those. Be educated. I love that. Mm-hmm. Any last words that you'd like to share with that we haven't covered that you feel like are really, really important for people to know?
I would love for everybody to know that I do offer a monthly divorce workshop. It is a virtual workshop, so you can from anywhere. It is specifically for women, though. We do have a safe space for women to have conversations about this. But you can register for that at my website, and I encourage you to come because you will walk away more knowledgeable.
Well, thank you, Donna. You know what? I love your energy. I really love, it's like warm, cozy charm, right? The Southern charm. And I'll have all your information down in the bottom in the show notes and things like that so people can contact you. And thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your knowledge and helping people in this space. I always really love to show my appreciation because it can be a little bit of a difficult space sometimes to be in. It
takes a village, and I love to be part of the village. So
yes, well, I really, really appreciate. So thank you. So hold on just one sec. So we want to thank everyone for checking in with us on another episode of the Divorcing Strong. I've been your host, Becky Sampson, with Donna Cates. And until next time, we'll see you later. Thanks, hon. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.